So first of all, thank you for having me here today. I'm glad to be here, but I hate to be here because this is not a good event. It is not a happy time, and it is a serious problem. And I can't even convey my anger, and so my anger management inner self says, spare the words that you really want to say. This is obscene what's happening in this country. And we're going to have to solve this problem one way or the other. Because when Congress ever comes back, if they go through with these cuts, we cannot just simply sit back and gnash our teeth and say, wait 3 years and we'll get rid of the bastards. That's not going to work. Because our needs are going to be immediate. And, so my challenge, and I've said this to others in the Democratic Party, that the reason you all are going to suffer is so billionaires get tax cuts. There is a state and local remedy to that. You could target tax increases on the people who had the biggest tax cuts. They'd be no worse off than they were before, but we could be assured of having the revenues we need to maintain services. If we think we're going to solve this problem without raising revenues, if the Republicans go through with cutting the positions, we're deluding ourselves. And so it's great to be here and say this is what we support, but we also have got to be willing to look at real solutions and implement things that we know will work. Can I get that back again?
Do you want it back all disordered, or you want it?
I'll put it in there. Because I'm unscripted for a moment there.
Let me just help with this while you.
Which I like best was when
You
I'm
do good with
unscripted.
unscripted.
But there are some points that I didn't all remember, and I want to make sure I get to everything I wanted to say. So first I want to thank my team, and Christine in particular, because you were like one of the many deliberate hires that I did.
Woo!
Where I looked for people, not that I knew, but I looked for people who had expertise in the field. Because my goal is to deliver the best services we could possibly deliver. And to do that, you need people who understand that. And I knew from working with you in your other capacity that you understand this problem better than anybody. And so I'm really proud of my team. I'm really proud of James Bridges in HHS. Your leadership there has also made all this possible. And I want to thank MCCH for the work you do. Tirelessly, year after year, you're out there telling us what we need. And I've always asked people, even if the county can't do everything, because as much as I'd like to, I know we can't, we at least have to know what we have to do. Because if you can't do everything, you should know what's missing, because as long as you know what's missing, you have this internal driver that says, I got to fill that gap, I got to fill that gap. If all I ever get asked is what you think I can pay for, then I'll pay for it, and then it'll appear to be that I've solved the problem. But I would rather know that everything I did didn't solve the problem than pretend what we did solves the problem. That's the only way you make progress, is to stay honest about where you are. So we need to keep that up. We know that HUD is cutting 70% of continuum of care funding for permanent housing. Not like a 7% trim or a 10% trim, but billionaires just can't get by without these cuts. And so you understand why you're being sacrificed, and it is an obscene thing. This county works every day to ensure that all people, including the most vulnerable, have a safe, stable, and affordable place to call home. And that's why it matters, and why the threat of losing federal funding from HUD is so concerning to us. And I'm actually baffled by the president, because I remember when he ordered his troops into D.C., and he said, we're going to take these people off the street, and they should be in places and be getting treatment. And I thought, okay, we can agree with that. I had Christine write a proposal to the president of what it would take to do that. We're more than happy. I think everybody would agree. We don't want people on the street, and we want people getting treatment. So if that's what he wants, we're more than happy to deliver. But you deliver not by cutting the amount of money we're getting, but by increasing the amount of money we're getting. If that were the attitude of the federal government, we could solve this problem. And the truth is, it would make a difference for people. Like, homelessness does not need to be a lifetime sentence. It should be short, and it should be stabilizing, and it should come to an end. And we could actually do that if we had the resources to do it. So I wish the president would, for once, actually do what he says he's going to plans on doing, as opposed to saying, this is a nice cover, because it's good for public consumption to say they should be housed and taken care of. It's not good for public consumption to say, but I'm not going to do it. And he needs to own the fact that he refuses to do what he says we ought to be doing. He's a hypocrite. I don't think anybody here is surprised about that. I think one of the things that make the county so strong is that we've always invested heavily in the local safety net. And we understand how important that safety net is. It changes lives. It's the difference between a community with problems that spill over to the street all the time and a community where we put the resources into it so those problems can be dealt with in a more appropriate way. And it gives people some hope for a future. I was told about these potential cuts several weeks ago. We wrote our congressional delegation detailing some of the cuts. We know it's a tall order just for our congressional delegation. We've got a delegation that's working very hard for Montgomery County, except for Andy Harris, who could care less about any of these people. But the other House of Representatives and Senate members we have are working for all of us. And no matter how much they do without cooperation from the Republican Party, or at least a few, and you know how few it is. It's like 5 or 6 senators and 5 or 6 House members flip sides, and you could actually govern reasonably again. And that's all it would take. So maybe there's some miracle out there that some of the Republicans that didn't used to be this deranged actually readjust to where they actually used to be and come back and are partners for things. I want to thank Senator Alsobrooks' office for assisting us to get this issue the attention it deserves on Capitol Hill, and continuing care funding is going to help keep vulnerable people in their homes and to strengthen our communities. Our county has done extraordinary work in planning and initiating a strategic response to homelessness. We started on this, it was the day after of the last election. We knew then where all of this was going, and we knew we had to plan. We did not want to wait until all the shoes dropped and then say, gee, what are we going to do? So we're not walking into this unprepared. We have a sense of the things we need to do. We're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to help people experiencing homelessness. We are going to continue to make sure that we have the housing supply that we need. We're going to continue to build on that housing supply. And we're going to continue to be the county that expands our services, not that retreats and falls back. I don't want to give them a victory and let them destroy everything we've built, because we're not powerless, and we have to keep remembering that. There are ways to get this done. So thank you all for being here. It is great to be at a demonstration, or this is a rally, or both. And it's really great to see all the faces of the people here and the residents who've turned out today. Thank you all so much for everything you do.